Welcome to the Emergency Fund Dilemma, where we separate smart safety from distracting yield chasing. In this video, we will explain what an emergency fund is for, where to keep it, and how to avoid common traps that reduce your ability to access cash when you need it most. We will also discuss controversial alternatives, separate operational cash from your true emergency reserve, and give you a step-by-step plan. Let's get started. An emergency fund is a dedicated pool of money, usually 3 to 6 months of essential living expenses, that exists solely to protect you from financial shocks. Its purpose is security and immediate access, not return maximization. Because emergencies are unpredictable, your emergency fund must be parked where you can quickly use it without penalties or delays. Here's our roadmap. First, we will define the principles of an emergency fund. Next, we will show where to safely park it. Then, we will debunk the obsession with finding an extra 1% of yield. After that, we will consider alternatives and trade-offs. We will also separate operational float in checking from your true emergency reserve. Finally, we will end with an action plan and a couple of quizzes to reinforce your knowledge. This video is for educational purposes only. It is not financial, legal, or tax advice. Your situation is unique, so before taking action, consider consulting a qualified professional who understands your specific circumstances. Let's begin with the safest, most recommended options: high-yield savings accounts and highly accessible money market funds. These accounts offer better rates than traditional checking while keeping your money within reach at a moment's notice. The key principle is that immediate liquidity matters more than squeezing out a small yield difference. Even a 1% improvement on $50,000 produces roughly $500 per year. That is not worth compromising instant access when the entire point of this fund is to be ready for emergencies. In short, simplicity beats complexity when things go wrong. Next, here is a straightforward process to build your emergency fund. First, calculate your essential monthly expenses, including housing, food, transportation, insurance, and minimum debt obligations. Second, set a target of 3 to 6 months of those costs, trending towards 6 if your income is variable. Third, open a high-yield savings account with a reputable institution. Fourth, you may optionally add a highly accessible money market fund as a secondary bucket. Fifth, automate transfers to the fund immediately after payday so it grows without effort. Sixth, keep these funds separate from checking and investments to avoid accidental spending or market risk. Finally, review your target quarterly and adjust as your expenses and risks change. Now let's address the obsession with tiny yield differences. An extra 1% on $50,000 amounts to about $500 per year before taxes. In exchange for that, many people add complex instruments or accept restrictions that could delay access during emergencies. That trade can become very expensive if you cannot access your money when you need it most. The goal of your emergency fund is resilience and certainty, not return optimization. This diagram visualizes a practical allocation. First, an operational float of roughly 1 month in checking to cover bills and daily expenses. Second, the core emergency fund, 3 to 6 months, held primarily in a HYSA, or a highly accessible money market fund. Third, an optional buffer of up to 10% in more restrictive instruments, such as short-term Treasuries or certificate of deposit ladders. The emphasis remains on the core being instantly accessible. Some savers place their emergency funds in ultra-short-term Treasury exchange-traded funds, such as SGOV, to gain a small yield advantage and potential state tax benefits. However, selling requires market hours on weekdays. That constraint can matter if you face an emergency on a weekend or during off hours. You also introduce brokerage complexity and potential settlement timing issues. The benefit is modest compared to the risk of delayed access, which is the opposite of what an emergency fund should deliver. Let's compare. On the left, high-yield savings and accessible money market funds offer immediate or near-immediate access with minimal friction. There is no dependency on market trading hours, and fewer steps mean fewer opportunities for errors during stressful moments. On the right, Treasury bill ETFs may deliver slightly higher yields, but they require selling during market hours, they involve brokerage accounts and settlement timelines, and they introduce more complexity. For an emergency fund, the marginal yield rarely justifies the additional access risk. This timeline demonstrates why access speed is crucial. Late on a Saturday night, a car breakdown demands quick payment. With a high-yield savings account or a money market with debit features, you can move money immediately. With a Treasury ETF, you must wait until the market opens. On Sunday afternoon, an emergency room copay presents the same problem. The ETF still cannot be sold. By Monday morning, you can sell the ETF, but settlement may delay when cash actually becomes available. The difference in timing shows the risk of relying on market access for emergencies. Now let's separate concepts. The float in your checking account is operational cash for bills and day-to-day expenses. It is not part of your emergency fund. Your true emergency fund sits separately, typically in a high-yield savings account or a highly accessible money market fund. Do not invest money that you might need tomorrow, because emergencies and market downturns frequently occur together, increasing the chance of being forced to sell at a loss. This table summarizes placement. Operational float belongs in checking for immediate access to pay bills. The core emergency fund belongs in a high-yield savings account or accessible money market for immediate or near-immediate access. An optional buffer can be placed in certificates of deposit or treasury bills, but expects slower access or market hours dependency. Finally, investments should remain separate and should not be considered part of your emergency fund. Quiz time. Question: where should the bulk of your emergency fund live? Options are A, in a high-yield savings account or highly accessible money market fund, B, in a treasury bill exchange-traded fund for the highest possible yield, C, in your checking account alongside monthly bills, or D, in a long certificate of deposit ladder to lock in rates. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is A. A high-yield savings account or a highly accessible money market fund provides the best balance of immediate access, simplicity, and reasonable yield for the specific job your emergency fund must do. Second quiz. You need cash on Sunday night. Which option is most likely to fail you on timing? Your options are A, a high-yield savings account with instant transfer, B, a money market fund with debit or check features, C, an ultra-short treasury ETF in a brokerage account, or D, cash accessible via a bank branch ATM. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is C. Selling an exchange-traded fund requires open market hours, so a Sunday night emergency would likely force you to wait until the next trading session. That delay defeats the purpose of an emergency fund. Here are the key takeaways. Prioritize liquidity over small yield differences. High-yield savings and accessible money market funds are the ideal homes for most emergency funds. Certificates of deposit or treasury bills can be used only as an optional buffer due to access limitations. Keep operational float in checking separate from your emergency reserve. Finally, do not invest money you might need tomorrow. Let's wrap with an action plan. First, calculate 3 to 6 months of essential expenses. Second, open and fund a high-yield savings account. Third, optionally add a highly accessible money market fund. Fourth, automate contributions right after payday. Fifth, review quarterly and maintain strict separation from checking and investments. Finally, ignore small yield distractions and keep your system simple, fast, and reliable. Thanks for watching. If you found this valuable, please like the video, share it with someone who is fixated on tiny yields, and subscribe for more content on building financial resilience. Tell us in the comments how you structure your emergency fund and what changes you plan to make after watching.